Alright guys, I'm back with another horror room movie review, and this is The Hills Have Eyes, the original movie from 1977. The movie this poster's from, this awesome poster, probably my favorite horror movie poster I have so far. It's got this really smooth quality to it. But yeah, I paid like 20 bucks for that thing. But I like this movie. It is 1977. And I could see why it would be something special for its time, but I can also see people today watching it and saying, oh, this movie sucks. But you have to look at it as a classic. It was written and directed by Wes Craven, one of his first movies. And even though the gore has that weird red color to it that a lot of movies in the 70s and early 80s had, and the acting at times is pretty bad, that Bobby character, my God. It's still an enjoyable movie, and it kept me interested enough that I wanted to see how things played out. It only had a budget of $230,000, and it made back $25 million. So definitely a successful movie here. And it starts off with this old man who's leaving town. He's in the Nevada desert, and he's leaving town because there's no business, and Ruby shows up. She's one of the pack of cannibals that live in the hills. And she sneaks up behind him. He turns around and says, "Don't you make a sound when you walk?" She says, "Nuh-uh." It was really funny, because that's like the first thing that happens. But her name's Ruby, and the rest of them are named after planets. Like the entire pack that live in the hills, they're named Jupiter, who's the leader. You got Pluto, Michael Berryman, the guy on the poster. You have Mars, Mercury, and Ruby. Shouldn't she be Venus or something? So yeah, I don't know why Wes Craven did that, but she wants to trade some items for food, and he says he doesn't have anything left. He's traded everything he can, he's leaving town, and she says, "Well, will you take me with you?" And he says, "No, Jupiter would get pissed if I did that." So he's obviously afraid of Jupiter, but he does know that these people are living in the hills. Another family shows up in a camper. They get some gas, and they're traveling through the Nevada desert. They're on their way to California, but they want to stop at a silver mine for their parents' anniversary. You got the parents, Bob, who's a retired detective, the mom, I can't remember her name, their kids, Bobby, Brenda, and Lynn's husband, and their baby. So that's your group here. And the old man gives them some gas, and he says, just keep heading to California. Forget about those mines. Stay on the main road. He's trying to help them out here. But after they leave, the pack blows up the old man's truck so he can't skip town. And then we see the family in the camper. They're driving, and they find out that they're near a nuclear testing site. And Bob loses his shit. The mom's reading the map. The daughters are talking about how they don't want to go to the silver mine. Let's just go to California. And Bob freaks out. It was very Clark Griswold. Like, you're going to enjoy this damn trip. So it was kind of funny, but the military is flying some planes in the area. A low-flying plane comes by, causes them to wreck the car. So the hill people are watching them. And Doug decides to walk one way. The car's destroyed. Axle's broken. Doug decides to walk back to a military base and try and find some help. And Bob decides he's going to go back to the old man's gas station. So they leave Bobby with a gun. Bob has a gun. Bobby has a gun. And they leave Bobby in charge of his sisters, his mom, to stay with the camper. And one of the dogs, Beauty, starts freaking out at something, and she chases off after it, and Bobby runs after her, and he starts climbing this cliff, chasing his dog, which didn't make any sense, but he's climbing up this huge cliff, and he hears something that hurt the dog, so he climbs up, and he finds the dog dead, and it's been gutted by somebody. And then he hears something, and he gets scared, and he just takes off running. So now it's nighttime, and Brenda goes looking for Bobby. His mom and his other sister Lynn are on the radio trying to get some help, and they hear like heavy breathing, but they don't even notice that Bobby's missing. I mean, he's been missing all damn day. They know Bob and Doug went looking for help, but Bobby's been gone all day, and they don't even seem to care except for Brenda. So Brenda goes looking for him. He finally returns and he goes back to the camper. Bob makes it to the gas station, but he doesn't see anyone, so he goes inside to use the phone. The old man pops out, shoots at him, and then tries to hang himself immediately afterwards. So Bob saves this guy, and he tells Bob about how his wife gave birth to a son, this giant hairy baby. He says that the baby was like, I can't remember how big he said it was, but it was really tall. It weighed like 20 pounds, and it was covered in hair. So a giant hairy baby. And this baby, his son, killed animals growing up. It burned his house down, which killed his daughter. And so he bashed his face in with a tire iron and left him out in the desert. And eventually, his son kidnapped a prostitute and raised his own crazy family up in the hills. And one of the pack, I believe it was Jupiter, who he's talking about here, jumps through the window, grabs the old man, and beats him with a tire iron. So I guess that's supposed to be justice for Jupiter. Bob tries to run back to camp. His heart starts to give out on him. He collapses. The family is taunting him, but he can't. He tries to shoot, but it's dark. He can't see him. They're taunting him, and he just collapses right there. So Beast, the other dog, breaks his chain and takes off, and then we find out Doug returns. He found some supplies, but he didn't find any people. So Bobby tries to tell Doug about Beauty and how she was found killed, and it really freaked him out. He's all shaken up about this, but he doesn't want to worry his sisters, and every time he's trying to talk to Doug, one of them walks in the room, so Doug doesn't know what's going on. And he tells Doug that maybe he should sleep in the camper, and Doug says, look, everything's fine. I'm going to sleep in the car tonight. So Bobby hears Beast outside, and it sounds like his dog is hurt. So he goes looking for it, but it's really just one of the family members making dog noises. So Bobby goes back to the camper, he looks around, and he's been locked out. So he goes to Doug, who's in the car, and he says he's been locked out, and he ends up telling Doug and Lynn what's going on, what happened to Beauty, Beast is missing, and he thinks something really weird is going on here, the heavy breathing on the radio. And inside the camper, we see the reason he's locked out is because Pluto has gone inside. And he's taking stuff out of the fridge, and then he gets under the covers with Brenda, and he radios the other cannibals, and he says, do it. And we see the other cannibals nail Bob to a cactus and set him on fire. This causes Doug, Bobby, all of them to take off. They find Bob burning. They spray him with a fire extinguisher, but he doesn't make it. And back at the camper, Mars shows up, and he throws Pluto off of Brenda. He says something to him like, you're not even a man. And he looks at the baby, and he looks at Brenda, and he says, both fat and juicy. Terrible acting here. But I mean, how can you say that? They're supposed to be hill people. So. But he doesn't make it. So Mars is in the camper with Pluto, and the mom and the sister, Lynn, make it back inside first. They see what's going on here. Pluto takes off, and Mars tries to steal the baby. The mom grabs a broom and starts hitting him in the face. And they get into this big struggle, and he pulls out a gun and he shoots the mom. And then Lynn's trying to fight him. She's able to stab him in the knee, but he shoots her too. And he takes the baby and he leaves. He tries to shoot Brenda, but he's out of bullets. So Doug and Bobby show up. Doug sees they took his daughter, and he chases after him, but it's dark. He can't see anything, so he comes back to the camper. And then we see the pack, and they head back to their cave, and they radio Mercury. And he's talking about eating the toes, and a really weird character here, but the dog shows up, Beast, and pushes Mercury off the cliff. The dog was the most useful person in this entire family. He actually killed two pack members in this movie by himself. So the dog was kicking ass. I'm glad they didn't do anything to Beast. So he pushes Mercury off the cliff, And Jupiter tells Pluto to go get Mercury so they can eat, and Jupiter asks Mars if he killed them all like he told him. So the mom dies in the camper from the gunshot wound. Lynn dies. They hear a noise at the door, but it's just Beast with a radio. He was able to not only kill Mercury, but take his radio back to the family. Awesome dog. So they hear Jupiter on the radio, and Pluto tells Jupiter that Mercury's dead. And now Jupiter is pissed. So in the morning, Doug gets Beast, and he goes after the baby. Bobby finally gets someone on the radio, and he tells them he only has one gun and 2 bullets, and he needs help. And of course, it's just Pluto. They have the other radio. Oh, boy. But anyways, it's just Pluto messing with him. And Pluto was rocking some sweet shoulder pads. It's actually those shoulder pads right there. But, God, those looked horrible. Oh, my God. So anyways, Beast attacks Pluto. Jupiter shoots at him, scares the dog away. Doesn't hurt the dog, thank God. And it destroys Pluto's foot. So Jupiter grabs the radio, and he calls back to Mars and says, kill the baby. And Ruby, who's actually she broke the chain, but she was chained up outside the cave because she tried to leave the family, so they were pissed at her. But she got out of her chains. She takes the baby and runs up the cliff, where she meets Doug and gives the baby back to Doug. And Mars starts chasing up the cliffs after him. Jupiter leaves Pluto. Beast shows up, bites his neck, kills Pluto. Bobby and Brenda use their mom's body as bait, and they catch Jupiter in this rope trap. Wraps around his legs, and they're using the car tire to pull him in, but the car runs out of gas because the cannibals took the gas. So Jupiter escapes. They run in the camper where they have another trap set to explode. So when he opens the door, it strikes a match and the whole thing goes up in flames. But Jupiter is suspicious now, so they jump out the window and they're waiting for the camper to explode. And Jupiter waits for something. I don't know what happens here, but he's like examining the door, and somehow he sets off the camper but doesn't get hurt. I have no idea how he pulled this off, because he has to open the door to strike the match, and he would be way too close to the explosion to survive. So how in the hell did Jupiter make this camper explode without getting hurt? If he knew it was a trap, and how would he even know that that's what the trap was? A lot of questions with that, but camper explodes. So Bobby and Brenda go to check the remains, make sure he's dead. He pops up, he body slams Bobby. Typical WWE scoop slam here. And Brenda attacks him from behind with an axe, and Bobby shoots him with his last 2 bullets. So that's the end of Jupiter, the leader of the pack. Yet there's still Mars running around, and there's a mother. There's Papa Jupe, who's Jupiter, and then there's a mom of the cannibals. And nothing happened to her in this movie. But we see Doug and Ruby. They're running from Mars in the cliff. And Doug really trusts Ruby with his baby. This cannibal woman he just met, he really trusts her with his daughter. But they run through the cliffs, and Ruby wants to help Doug. So Doug's being attacked by Mars. She picks up a rattlesnake. She holds its head, has it bite Mars' neck. And while he's being, I guess, poisoned, she watches as Doug stabs her brother to death. And that's it. It says the end immediately after, like while he's stabbing him. So he stabs her brother a ton of times, and she's just watching. She does kind of freak out and say, "Oh, Mars," but she's still watching this stranger kill her brother and trying to help him. I mean, even if Doug didn't stab him to death, he was still bit by a rattlesnake and wouldn't have made that. So obviously Ruby wanted Mars to die. I don't know, I just thought that was odd. But that's how the movie ended. So you have Beast, you have Bobby and Brenda, and you have Doug, and they all survive. And the only hill people that survive that we know about are Mama Jupe and Ruby. But I do think Pluto is in the sequel, so he does survive the attack from Beast, but I'll have to see what happens with those movies. I'm not really sure how good they're going to be. I mean, I'm going to keep an open mind because I've never watched the Hills Have Eyes series. There's 5 movies in this series, the first 3 and then the 2 remakes. And this was the first time I watched the original. I've seen some of the second remake on the Sci-Fi Channel, something about soldiers going through the cliffs, but I've never watched any of these. So I'm really looking forward to going through the series, but I just have, and I'm going to keep an open mind, but I have this feeling that the sequel to this and the third movie are going to be pretty bad. And that's because Wes Craven disowned the sequel, and the third movie has nothing to do with the first 2 and was released by HBO. And it has nothing to do with the story. The remake should be good though, but yeah, the sequel and The Hills Have Eyes 3 I'm a little on the fence about, but I'm going to watch it and see for myself. But anyways, that's my review of the original Hills Have Eyes. I definitely recommend that you guys check this one out. It's a fun movie. You just can't take it too seriously. And keep in mind, it's 1977. This is a classic movie. So don't expect a Michael Bay production here when you watch it with the gore and the acting. Because there is some cheesy stuff here, but it's a fun Cannibal in the Hills movie. So I definitely enjoyed this one. But anyways, hope you guys liked the video. Leave your thoughts on this movie in the comments, and thanks for watching. Bye. $1,000, and it made back $25 million. So definitely a successful movie here. And it starts off with this old man who's leaving town. He's in the Nevada desert, and he's leaving town because there's no business, and Ruby shows up. She's one of the pack of cannibals that live in the hills. And she sneaks up behind him. He turns around and says, "Don't you make a sound when you walk?" She says, "Nuh-uh." It was really funny, because that's like the first thing that happens. But her name's Ruby, and the rest of them are named after planets. Like the entire Alright guys, I'm back with another horror room movie review, and this is The Hills Have Eyes, the original movie from 1977. The movie this poster's from, this awesome poster, probably my favorite horror movie poster I have so far. It's got this really smooth quality to it. But yeah, I paid and even though the gore has that weird red color to it that a lot of movies in the 70s and early 80s had, and the acting at times is pretty bad. That Bobby character, my god. It's still an enjoyable movie, and it kept me interested enough that I wanted to see how things played out. It only had a budget of $230, like $20 for that thing. But I like this movie. It is 1977. And I could see why it would be something special for its time, but I can also see people today watching it and saying, "Oh, this movie sucks." But you have to look at it as a classic. It was written and directed by Wes Craven, one of his first movies.